The roar of 50,000 people hits you like a physical wave. You are standing on hot sand in the heart of the greatest arena ever built, and the sun is blinding off the polished armor of the man who wants you dead. This is Rome. In the year 80, the opening of the Colosseum itself, two men face each other across the sand. In a few hours, one story will end here that the Romans will never forget. But to understand this moment, we have to go back and ask a simple question. Who were the gladiators, really? Forget almost everything the movies have told you. The gladiators were not just doomed slaves, butchered for fun, dying by the thousand every afternoon. The truth is, stranger and far more human. They were the celebrities of their age, feared and adored, despised and desired. Some were prisoners with no choice. Others were free men who volunteered, signing away their bodies for money and glory. They trained like elite athletes, ate a special diet, and were treated by the finest doctors in the empire. And most of them, fight after fight, actually lived. For nearly 7 centuries, this brutal spectacle sat at the very center of Roman life. Emperors rose and fell on the games they gave. A man's career, his popularity, even his safety could depend on how well he entertained the mob. And out on the sand, a small number of trained fighters became legends, their names scratched onto the walls of the city by adoring fans. To become one of them, though, a man first had to be broken and then remade. So let us begin where almost every gladiator's story began, not in the arena, but in chains. Most gladiators did not choose their fate. They were the empire's losers, prisoners of war, dragged back from the frontiers in their thousands, condemned criminals, sentenced to the sword, slaves sold by masters who wanted them gone. For these men, the arena was a death sentence with a single slender thread of hope that if they fought well enough, long enough, they might one day earn their freedom. Their lives were no longer their own. They were property, an investment, bought and sold like livestock, valued only for what they could do with a blade. But here is what surprises people most. Some gladiators were free men who chose this life. They were called the auctority and they volunteered. Why would a free Roman sell himself into the arena? For some, it was crushing debt. The gains paid, and paid well. For others, it was the sheer pull of fame, the chance to be adored, to feel the roar of the crowd. Even men of rank were drawn to it. To the Romans, this was scandalous and thrilling all at once. A respectable citizen throwing away his honor for the glory of the sand. Whether slave or volunteer, every new gladiator swore a terrible oath. He vowed to endure, in the chilling Roman words, to be burned, to be bound, to be beaten, and to be killed by the sword. With that oath, he surrendered his body completely to the school that owned him. A free volunteer became, for the length of his contract, as good as a slave. It was a kind of living death, a man signing away every right he had. And yet thousands did it, walking willingly through the gates of a place that was part prison and part academy. That place was the Ludus, the gladiator school. From the outside, it was a fortress. Inside, a disciplined, brutal world built to forge fighters. The men lived in tiny cells, often chained at night, drilled by day, under constant guard. Escape was nearly impossible, and the price of rebellion was death. The most famous rebel of all, a Thracian gladiator named Spartacus, broke out of a school like this and nearly brought Rome to its knees. After him, the Romans watched their gladiators very, very closely. Running the school was the lanista, the owner and trainer. He was a businessman, plain and simple, and his gladiators were his stock. He bought them, fed them, trained them, and rented them out to whoever was staging the games. A good fighter was worth a fortune, and a dead one was money lost. This simple fact that gladiators were expensive shaped everything. The Lannister had no interest in seeing his investment slaughtered. He wanted them winning, surviving, and fighting again. The Romans despised the Lannister as a dealer in blood, even as they depended on him completely. Training was relentless. New recruits practiced endlessly against a tall wooden post called the palace, hacking and thrusting until the moves became instinct. They fought with weapons of wood and blunted metal, far heavier than the real thing, to build crushing strength. Specialist coaches, often retired gladiators themselves, drilled each man in his particular fighting style. This was not wild, chaotic brawling. It was a refined martial art, closer to fencing than to butchery, with footwork, timing, and discipline that took years to master. And they were fed for it. Gladiators were nicknamed the Retiarius, the Barley Men, because their diet was heavy with barley and beans. A deliberate, carbohydrate-rich regime designed to build a thick layer of fat over the muscle. That fat was armor of a kind. It protected nerves and blood vessels, so a slashing wound might bleed dramatically for the crowd without crippling the fighter underneath. Modern scientists studying the bones from a real gladiator graveyard have confirmed it. These men ate like a very particular kind of athlete. They were also kept in remarkable health. A valuable gladiator received medical care better than almost anyone else in the ancient world. In fact, one of history's greatest physicians, Galen, began his career as a doctor to the gladiators of a Roman city, learning about the human body from their wounds. He boasted that under his care, far fewer of his fighters died. To the Lannister, this made perfect sense. A healthy gladiator was a profitable one. These men were broken and rebuilt, fed and mended, all to make them the deadliest and most valuable athletes in Rome. When a gladiator finally entered the arena, he was not just a man with a sword. He was a character, a type, with his own armor, weapons, and style. The matchups were carefully designed, almost like a deadly game. Each type built to exploit another's weakness. There was the Murmillo, the heavy fighter with a tall crested helmet, a large shield, and a short stabbing sword. Slow but armored, he was a walking wall, advancing behind his shield, waiting for the moment to strike. Against him might stand the Thracian, armed with a small shield and a wickedly curved blade, designed to reach around an enemy's guard and strike at his exposed back or side. Or the Hoplomachus, who fought with a spear and a small round shield, trying to keep his enemy at a distance and strike from beyond the reach of that short sword. Each pairing was a puzzle of attack and defense, speed against armor, reach against power. The crowd knew every type intimately and argued their favorites like fans of rival teams. And then there was the most distinctive of them all, the Retiarius, the net man. He wore almost no armor, just a guard on one shoulder. In his hands, he carried a weighted net, a long three-pronged trident, and a dagger. His whole strategy was to stay out of reach, to entangle his opponent in the net, then strike with the trident. Fast and lightly armed, he was the great underdog of the arena. Other gladiators looked down on him, but in the hands of a master, that net and trident were terrifying. These fights were not a free-for-all. They were controlled, refereed contests. A pair of officials, the Summa Rudis and his assistant, stood close to the action with long staffs ready to enforce the rules, to separate the fighters, to pause the bout. A gladiator who broke the rules could be whipped or burned with a hot iron back into line. The goal of a match was rarely a quick kill. It was a display of skill and courage, a drama that built and turned, designed to thrill a crowd that had seen it all before. A day at the games followed a grim theatrical rhythm. In the morning came the wild beast hunts, exotic animals from across the empire. Lions, leopards, bears, and elephants paraded and killed for the spectacle. At midday came the executions, condemned criminals put to death in the arena, often in elaborate and horrifying ways. This was the low point of the day, the warm-up. The crowd sometimes thinned at noon, because everyone knew that the real stars, the main event, came in the afternoon. The man who paid for all of this was the editor, the sponsor of the games, often a politician, or the emperor himself. He staged the spectacle to win the love of the people. A magnificent show could launch a career. A cheap or boring one could ruin it. And so the editor watched the crowd as closely as the crowd watched the sand. Their roars, their jeers, their thumbs were a kind of voting, a raw, direct conversation between the powerful and the mob, played out over the lives of the fighters below. The afternoon began with a procession, the pompa, as the gladiators paraded into the arena in their gleaming armor, to music and cheering. You may have heard that they turned to the emperor and cried, "Those who are about to die salute you." It is one of the most famous lines in history. But the truth is, it was recorded only once, at a very different kind of staged battle, not the regular games. The everyday gladiator almost certainly never said it. Like so much about these men, the legend has grown far larger than the fact. Which brings us to the greatest myth of all. Did gladiators always fight to the death? The answer, for most of their history, is no. Think again about the economics. Each of these men was the product of years of expensive training, a small fortune on legs. To kill the loser of every single bout would have been like burning money for entertainment. The lanista who owned them, and even the sponsor who rented them, had every reason to keep these valuable fighters alive to perform another day. So, when a gladiator was beaten, disarmed, or wounded, he could raise a finger and appeal for mercy. This was the missio. Now the decision passed to the editor, who almost always listened to the crowd. If the fighter had shown courage, if he had entertained them, they would call for him to be spared. The famous thumb signals come from here, though we are no longer sure which gesture meant life and which meant death. A turned thumb could send a man to his grave or grant him another sunrise. A defeated gladiator who fought bravely had a very good chance of walking away alive. By some estimates, in the early empire, a gladiator might survive 9 out of 10 of his fights. But do not mistake this for safety. The danger was real, and it accumulated. Fight after fight, year after year, the odds slowly turned against you. Wounds festered, reflexes faded. Sooner or later, most gladiators met an opponent they could not beat, or a crowd that turned its back. The arena gave them fame. In the end, it usually took everything. But oh, the fame. A successful gladiator was a superstar. The walls of Pompeii are covered in graffiti, praising them by name, calling one the heartthrob of the girls, another the master of the nets. Roman women, even noble women, were rumored to swoon over them. And here, the legend turns truly strange. Gladiator sweat, scraped from their skin after a fight, was sold as a beauty product, an ingredient in face creams, and even, it was said, an aphrodisiac. These men were slaves and outcasts, and at the very same time, objects of desire. The pull of the arena was so strong that even the most powerful men in Rome could not resist it. Some emperors didn't just sponsor the games, they fought in them. The most notorious was Commodus, who fancied himself a gladiator and a living god, stepping onto the sand to fight beasts and men in rigged, theatrical bouts that horrified the Roman elite. For an emperor to fight like a slave was a profound disgrace. But it shows just how intoxicating that world of blood and glory truly was, even to a man who ruled the world. For an ordinary gladiator, though, there was one prize above all others: freedom. A fighter who survived long enough, who won often enough, or who simply thrilled the crowd on a great day, might be granted the rudis, a simple wooden sword. It was the symbol of his release, the moment his oath was lifted and he was a free man once more. Some retired to become trainers, passing their deadly craft to the next generation. To win the wooden sword was to do the near impossible, to walk out of the arena alive and free. Which brings us, at last, back to where we began, the year 80. The opening of the Colosseum, that vast new stone arena, the gift of the Emperor Titus to the people of Rome. 100 days of games to celebrate it. And on one of those days, 2 gladiators stepped onto the fresh sand to fight a duel that would become the only such contest described in detail that has ever come down to us. Their names were Priscus and Verus, and we know their story because a poet was there to watch. The 2 men were perfectly, agonizingly matched. They fought, and neither could gain the upper hand. The crowd roared, willing one or the other to break, but the duel stretched on, skill against skill, will against will, neither man yielding an inch. They had sworn the same oath, trained in the same brutal art, and now each had finally met an equal. Hour by hour they battled across the sand of the brand new arena, until at last, exhausted, bleeding, and utterly spent, the 2 of them did something almost unheard of. Together, at the same moment, Priscus and Verus laid down their arms. They conceded to each other, and the crowd erupted. They appealed to Titus, and the emperor faced a decision no rulebook covered. 2 men, equal in courage, equal in skill, neither beaten, neither willing to kill the other. So Titus did the unthinkable. He declared them both winners. He sent into the arena, for each of them, the wooden sword of freedom. Priscus and Verus walked out of the Colosseum side by side, that day, as free men, equals to the very end. That single duel tells us everything the movies leave out. That these were not just victims, but artists of violence, bound by honor and capable of mercy, fighting for a freedom that was real. The gladiators were the product of a cruel and brilliant civilization, a mirror in which Rome saw its own appetite for blood, courage, and glory. They have been dead for 2,000 years, and we are still telling their stories. Perhaps that, in the end, is the immortality they were truly fighting for. Follow Embered Ages for more of the ancient world, brought to life by firelight.